And he would say, deliverance is coming for me. And we're going to walk to the water. And if God parts the sea, there's a bunch of us. I don't think I can show you that part of my arm, but I can't turn my body that way. But there's, I don't know, probably there might be 25 or more people that have walked to the water tattooed in his handwriting. Like
Wow.
all of his kids that are of age, his mother got a tattoo late in life. We most of us got them 2 days after he died, because that's actually the very next day, because that's the day we had it on the calendar. We thought we were going to get it while he was living. And so we had it
Oh.
scheduled, and we all went and got it. But the point is, he was saying, we're walking to the water, and we don't know if God's going to part the sea or not, but we're going to walk to the water.
Hi, friends, and welcome to Echoes of Impact. I'm Briana.
And I'm Cherise. We're so glad you're here with us.
On this podcast, we're dedicated to sharing real stories of how God shows up in life's challenges, how he can grow us, shape us, and use our experiences for something bigger.
So if you love Jesus and you want to walk more boldly in your purpose, you're in the right place.
Let's do this. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Echoes of Impact. I'm Briana.
And I'm Cherise.
And as always, we're so happy that you're here with us today. We're very blessed. We know how busy life gets. And so we just consider it an honor anytime we get to be here and you're spending time with us as well. And today we have a special guest. Her name is Lauren. She is in the Kansas City area. She is a remarried widow with 8 kids. Yep, you heard me right. That's 8. She's a real estate agent, but she also spends a lot of time as a taxi driver. And I'm assuming that means for the kids, not a literal taxi driver. And
Sure.
I get that. I have 4 kids and I feel like I'm a taxi driver. So that must be a full-time taxi driver with 8 kids. And then she also says she's a pretend farmer, which I find kind of funny. I want to hear more about that. She has her own podcast. It's called Ordinary Grit, where she focuses on ordinary people who have remarkable stories of survival and success, which is so cool. And also, just as a side note and a trigger warning, that Lauren's story does involve loss. She lost her husband from cancer. And so just want to put that out there in case anybody needs to use discretion on when and where to listen to this episode. Okay, so Lauren, I'm really excited to just hear more about your story and get to know you. And also, I have to tell you guys, our listeners, this funny side note. We actually don't know each other. Cherise nor I know Lauren, but we were introduced by a mutual friend. And as we were talking before we recorded, we somehow realized that we were all at the same family camp at the Lake of the Ozarks just a couple weeks ago. We were literally just probably passing each other. I mean, it was a pretty small event. It was only 2 churches that were doing this family event, and we were there together. So as always, I feel like God is in the details, right? And so it's not an accident that you are here today. But we always start every episode by asking the question, what does living out your purpose mean to you?
Okay. I would say that purpose has changed a little bit for me. I used to think that purpose was specifically wrapped up in my gifts and what I can do, what I can do for God. And I would say in the last several years that I have just been reminded of the truth that my purpose is to know God and to glorify Him. That I'm His no matter what I do. And obviously, while I have a voice and I have legs that work and gifts that God's given me, I'm supposed to use them. And that is one of the ways that God uses me to live out my purpose and to glorify Him. But if He took those things, if I didn't have those things, my purpose is just to be His and to glorify Him. And so it's pretty simple. I've like really simplified it to every day. What does it look like for me to be who He's asked me to be today with what He's given me today?
That's so good. That is something God has been working on my heart very recently in the last couple days too, is just taking the focus off the do and to just be. And I think that there's such a sweet presence that we can find in His presence when we take the time to just slow down and not focus on the works as much, because that's all
Mhm.
about everything else. So thank you so much for sharing that, Lauren.
Yeah.
So nice to meet you. I can't wait to hear your
Same.
story. Yeah, and hear more about you. If you wouldn't mind just taking a couple minutes to tell our listeners a little bit about you and what brought you to be here with us today.
Okay. Yeah, the elevator speech of your story is hard.
It is.
To,
Yeah,
to
it is.
No
simplify it.
pressure.
So I I grew up in a Christian home. My parents were churchgoers and Christian people. I mean, even my grandparents. I mean, there's a legacy of that in our family. I would say though that God kept me pretty close. I always say that He had me on a short leash, like the the little 3-foot leash that the dog when you're training a dog. I was just always the Lord always kept me really tight. And I was kind of a weird kid that knew that I was walking with Jesus, and I wanted my friends to know that. My mom tells stories of me like preaching on the back porch with my Bible as a kid in elementary school. So
That's
I
adorable.
was always kind of a weirdo. And just always kept really tight. The Lord kept me really tight. And really for the most part, nothing really hard happened to me. I mean, my parents are
Mm.
still married to each other, and that's a different story, and they talk about how difficult that is without the Lord. But they're still married and they're still living, and it was just me and my brother in a really simple kind of middle class American story. And so grew up learning how to walk with the Lord, had a great student experience that really taught me things about discipleship and leadership, and championed me really well. So that was all just God continuing to build and grow me. And then I got out of college and wanted to be called somewhere really cool, like San Diego or something. And that's not what the Lord did. And He brought me home. I felt called to be a missionary in a business suit. That's what I called myself. I was in the business world for a long time and bossy, and felt like that's where God used me, and ended up in ministry at the church where my parents went. And God very clearly called me back home there. And that's where I knew Scott, my late husband, but we became really good friends. We were doing student ministry there together. And so after many years of friendship and him ignoring me because he was older than me, we got married in 2008. He had a 14-year-old daughter at the time when we got married, and I was pretty young. So we were instantly a blended family. And then life was really fast from there. We had um I guess a baby within the first 2 years of being married. Sorry, I had to like do the math. And then that it's another story, but we got introduced to 5 Peruvians that were living in an orphanage in Peru, and went from 2 kids to 7 kids overnight.
What?
And
That's
yeah,
wild.
so that's a whole different story. And then after you have 7 kids, you're like, what's one more? And so we had another
Right.
baby. And so my baby was the bookend of it. Made me have 4 girls, 4 boys that range now in age from, I'm going to mess this up because birthdays, but I think
Yeah.
32 and 11. So I have 8 kids between 11 and in their
Oh, man.
early 30s. And so several that are
Wow.
married. And so my taxi driving is a little different now, I will say, because people can drive and, get dressed on their own. But
Yeah.
anyway, so we adopted the kids in 2012. Cruz was born in 14. And then in 2020, Scott got diagnosed with a cancer that was rare and aggressive, and we didn't necessarily know it was going to go quite this way, but 8 months later he was gone.
Man.
And
8
so
months.
8 months. Yep. And it's
Whoa.
almost, I mean, most of the cancers that you hear that are fast like that are like a brain cancer. Sometimes you hear,
Mhm.
6 months,
Yeah.
or there are some other stories that I have friends who lost their husbands in 3 weeks. So, I mean, it can go fast, but
Wow.
8 months was like, a
That's
blink.
yeah.
So,
What type of cancer did he have, if you don't mind me asking?
it was called the cynic cell carcinoma. It was
Okay.
in the parotid gland. It began in the parotid gland.
Hmm.
And by the time we knew what we were dealing with, it was all over the body.
Mm-hmm.
Whoa.
It was, not necessarily something that had to go that way if we had known what we were dealing with when it started there.
Hmm.
So anyway, so he was gone in March of 21, and I had, ranging from a 6-year-old, an 11-year-old. I had 6 kids still living at home at the time, and so we're 4+ years later, and they are getting married, and they are having kids, and they
Wow.
are in high school and 6th grade, and so
Like, life just keeps going.
life
Life
keeps moving.
just
Yep.
keeps moving.
Yep. So I actually remarried like 6 months ago, maybe a
Oh,
little
that's
more than
super
that.
fresh.
Yeah, we just got married in January. So
Congrats.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
so have definitely learned, a whole lot of things and all of that. So that's kind of where I land now. And the whole farmer thing, that'll come up later, I guess. But yeah, so a lot of life
We'll get
change
to
in the
that.
last, 4.5 years for
Oh,
sure.
yeah.
That's a lot of life.
Yeah.
Wow. So many questions. Okay, first,
Okay.
which you didn't really say this, but I guess it's also obvious. Like, he was diagnosed in 2020 when the world was already. Did you
Sure,
say
yeah.
that? Is that what you said?
Yep, I didn't say
Okay.
that. You're right. I did say 20. Yeah, you're right. The world started shutting down in March or April that year.
Yeah.
And we were, already kind of trying to figure out how to still, see people. Like my brother and I would meet up at Burr Oaks in this
Yeah.
area and go on walks. We were like bound and determined not to not see our family. And then July, he got diagnosed. We knew July 9th that year
July
Of
of
2020?
that
Wow.
things were bad. And so we lived COVID really differently than everyone else,
Yeah.
because all of a sudden, even though that's a different story, I think, about cancer and maybe being the guy with cancer, he never acted like he was dying. Never. He always
Whoa.
believed. Yeah. So that's harder for me than it is for my kids.
Mm.
My kids saw that as big faith. As the teammate, I felt ill-prepared for what
Mhm.
we were going to walk, because we weren't ever talking about the options of what could happen if God didn't choose to do this. And so that's maybe a different conversation for a different day. But all that to say, we did not close our doors during COVID. We didn't follow some of the rules, and I'm
Yeah.
so grateful for that. That was the year that at Thanksgiving and Christmas they told us not to gather with our families,
Yeah.
and we did, and not because we ever said this could be the last one, but it was. And
Yeah.
so I'm so glad that
Yeah.
Wow.
he never got COVID while he had cancer either. So, that was really interesting. We were in and out of hospitals in the Mayo Clinic, and he never had COVID. None of us had COVID until he was gone. A bunch of us got it that summer after he was gone. So
Wow.
anyway, we just lived with an intentionality. It wasn't foolish. People were careful, and if people wanted to wear masks, they did. But he just was really intentional about, if you were feeding us dinner, we wanted you to stay. And so I have really sacred moments of that season of older ladies in our church that would feed us these huge meals, because there was 8 people living in the house at the time. Yeah. And sitting on the floor with my kids, eating dinner with us, and hard conversations on the back porch
Mm.
that made one of my older boys at that time decide to follow Christ, because of these really raw, really crazy conversations we were having in the midst of real life. So
I love what
we
you
just
just
did
said.
COVID different.
I love what you just said. If you're going to feed us, we want you to stay.
Yeah.
In the whole, we as Christians in the church are very big about bringing meals.
Yeah.
And a lot of us are introverts, or be like, hey, just leave me the food and
Yeah.
go away, because we don't want to be bothered. But it sounds
Yeah.
like just that alone shows so much of your husband's heart, that he'd be like, no, come in and sit.
Yeah.
Even in the middle of dying of cancer. That's just so beautiful.
He was a pastor part-time.
Yeah.
We owned a business, but he was just a pastor at heart. And so,
Yeah.
yes, he was working for the church, but he was pastoring people all the way through that season, without realizing what he was saying. Or maybe he did. Maybe he had the wisdom and the foresight to know that he was leading people in that season in a way that was impactful. But those are just like really sacred moments that
Yeah.
he was orchestrating.
Hmm.
So
And now you're left with those memories too.
yeah,
They're
no,
safe,
for
like
sure.
you said.
Yep.
When you talk about having just like wild conversations, right? I always kind of laugh at God's timing of things because just last night, my husband and I were talking, and this is weird. This is not what we normally talk about, but we literally were talking about like, do you fear me dying? Do you fear me dying? And I basically told my husband, it's my greatest fear is him dying. And
Right.
he told me he doesn't fear at all. And I was like, wait, what? Like, I was like, what are you talking about? And I know,
Yeah.
like, and I told him, I said, biblically, I shouldn't because I know that like our actual home is heaven, but there's still so much on earth I want to be here for. It's like this weird struggle, right? Like
Yep.
we're not supposed to just want to die, but at the same time, it should be like this glory to die and be with Jesus, right? And so
Right.
after that weird conversation, I'm so curious. Then when you say that it was bringing about these interesting conversations, would you allow us behind the curtain of what some of those conversations
Sure.
sounded like?
Sure. I mean, again, I'm different than he was. He was not going to want to talk about the future or
Hmm.
like I used to. Well, when you're pregnant, I don't know if you guys have ever gotten to be pregnant, but you have wild dreams. And I would
Yeah.
have dreams when I was pregnant that he died and he like started dating my replacement while I was still living because he knew I was going to die. These wildly vivid, weird dreams. And I'd be like, look, if I die, you can date this woman, but you cannot date this woman. This woman cannot raise my kids. Like I could have these like silly, morbid conversations. He couldn't do it. Even this was way before he was ever sick. I mean, he could not talk about it. And so, but I was a little bit more like, hey, let's talk about it. If I die, you're going to want to get married. Like you always had a girlfriend, or whatever. And we could play and he couldn't play. So there was really not a lot of if I die conversations. But
Okay.
the night that I'm talking about, one of the wild, I mean, we talked about things again, because I talk about things. I look out and I'm going to over communicate. But there was it was July. It was like within weeks of his diagnosis. And we're on the back porch with several friends and just talking about like, wow, rewinding a tiny bit, we had lost a pastor to cancer that was one of Scott's best friends some years before. And so there's a part of you that's like, are we going to live this story too? Like, surely not. You're like, surely not. And so we were kind of having that more of a like really what's got up to conversation. And there was this tattoo that I wanted that I did not have yet. And it was part of Isaiah 26 says that your name and your fame or your name and your renown is the desire of my heart. And we
Is
were
that what
out
it
there.
says?
It says your name and your renown.
Okay.
Yeah,
Love it.
it's messy. And so we were sitting out there talking about, if his name and his fame, God's name and fame is what we live for. And it's the desire of my heart. Do I still mean that at the expense of Scott? Do I still mean that? Can I still get that tattooed on my body? Again, I had no tattoos at the time. And so that's what I thought I wanted. And if he takes him, can I still do that? Do I mean that? And so that was early enough that we were still really believing that we had a chance that things were going to be healed. Scott believed the entire time that he would be healed. I don't know. Maybe you mean it differently at the time in July. Obviously I got the tattoo after he was gone. So I like grip my
You
teeth.
still believe it.
Like, yes, I'm going to believe it because I have to believe what I said, even if I don't get what I want. Or it's like a genie. I thought that I rubbed the belly and I got my 3 wishes. That's not how God is. And so if it's true when I don't get what I want. It's true on my worst day. And so, yeah, sometimes you have to
Preach.
grin and bear it, but if it's true with a capital T. So those were the types of things. We didn't have a lot of those, but we had a lot of just intentional, living intentionally conversations. I mean, the kids were watching him every hospital visit, we just flat talked about Jesus everywhere. We had such dynamic, like, really powerful conversations in hospital rooms and doctors' offices, and he just really lived intentionally for 8 months. So, I think the kids saw that, and that was very powerful. I'm trying to think what else, just that I was thinking, as far as the fear, or as the wife, the
Mhm.
behind the curtain of that. In some ways, I had to be prepared to be the strong person.
Right. I was gonna say, because you have to walk through grief while helping your kids walk through grief,
Right. Well,
and
and
that's
so
scary.
I will say that for I don't know how my kids necessarily saw it, but you've got July, August, we're like deciding how we're going to fight. Is chemo the only answer? Is there any what do you call the, like, immunotherapy kind of stuff? We
Mhm.
didn't we
Yeah.
didn't w- we didn't qualify for any of that, but we were waiting to see. So we didn't start chemo until September, and come September he is already like, but he's about to start chemo, but he can't breathe. Well, and you don't understand necessarily why, but your body builds like pillows, almost like fluid. That's like when
Mm.
you've got so much sickness inside, these like pillows of fluid are building, and so that fluid was keeping him from being able to breathe.
Mm.
Because we were walking 5-6 miles a day up to that point. He was probably in the best shape of that I had known him. And so that was really interesting too. You're looking at this giant human and you're like, I'm going to poison him. Help me understand why. I asked Mayo Clinic that. Help me understand why we're going to poison him. Because he just looked, and they're like, well, these spots are going to do these things, and this is what will happen to his body if you don't kill it. And so, okay. But anyway, so yeah, you have to be the person that is there when he doesn't feel good. And that is, fortunately, I had just started real estate. How did that go? A year before that, so the July before.
Mhm.
And so at first it was like, the flexibility and how many
Yeah.
houses does mom have to sell to get new countertops? It was
Mm.
kind of fun. And then by then it really provided us flexibility. He was a business owner, so he was able to work from home, and we were just together all the time. So we were going to all the doctor's offices, and I just needed to have my act together. I couldn't melt down all the time. And so for a long time, you're on adrenaline fighting
Yeah.
to live, really, fighting to
Yeah.
live. It wasn't until, I don't know, January, February, he was gone by March 25th. The ball started to kind of roll down the hill pretty fast. January, February. And even in March, I was still having to have hard conversations with the kids because it was like you had to say it more than once. You had to say the hard things, and then you
Mm.
had to say it again because people just couldn't grab it. They just
Yeah.
couldn't,
Yeah.
I don't know. I couldn't imagine
That
it.
denial. Yeah.
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 Yeah. And I used to think that there was an element of imagination and discernment that if I could imagine it, that must be what God's saying. And
Mm.
I don't believe that anymore. That
Wow.
sometimes what God says, I cannot imagine. I truly cannot fathom. And
Mm.
sometimes you do obedient things when it doesn't feel good, or you walk out hard things that
Yeah.
because I couldn't imagine him dying. I couldn't imagine that being the story.
Mm.
And I had some real honest moments with the Lord. Like, come on, you had me go get these kids. 3 of my 5 Peruvians are boys, and then we had this baby boy, and you made me go get these boys, and you're gonna take their dad. Like, what a stupid story, God. Like,
Yeah.
Mm.
I had a lot of real honest moments, and would just come back to a lot of truths that Scott would say. Lauren, you can't add a day to my life. My days are numbered and they're written. And
Jeez.
so whatever my last day is, it's my last
Goodness.
day. So I had to come back to things that even Scott said sometimes, like, okay. And he would say, deliverance is coming for me. We're going to walk to the water, and if God parts the sea. There's a bunch of us. I don't think I can show you that part of my arm, but I can't turn my body that way. But there's, I don't know, probably there might be 25 or more people that have walked to the water tattooed in his handwriting. Like
Wow.
all of his kids that are of age. His mother got a tattoo late in life. We most of us got them 2 days after he died, because that's actually the very next day, because that's the day we had it on the calendar. We thought we were going to get it while he was living, and so we had it
Oh.
scheduled, and we all went and got it. But the point is, he was saying we're walking to the water, and we don't know if God's going to part the sea or not, but we're going to walk to the water. And so when the ball started really rolling down the hill fast, and I knew this is not going our way, and my thoughts while he was dying were, this is how deliverance is coming for him. Only God can do that. Only God made my brain go, this is deliverance. He is being delivered. And that only God can do that, because I'm not saying it wasn't sad, and I have had many, many still moments of, this just isn't how this was supposed to go. Or I even still sometimes am like, gosh, I can't believe it went this way. Like I cannot believe it actually went this way. But in the moments when you had to have something to hang on to, I'm like, this was deliverance. This is what you run the race for. He got the prize. And so he's okay. And I have a race to run here. We didn't have the same race. He did not pass the baton to me. I have my own race. We got to run parallel for a while, and it was a great thing. We had a great thing, and we liked each other every day. And that's a gift. You aren't even promised that. So that's a gift. But I have a race to run. And not just because I have little kids who, Cruz was 6 and he had a birthday in May after that March. And yes, he understood what happened, but he also wanted a birthday party. You're a kid. So life keeps moving.
Life keeps
And
moving.
so not only that, but also spiritually, I'm my own person. I have my own calling. And so it didn't die. My purpose didn't die because Scott died. And so I had to keep running.
Yeah.
So
I'm hearing a lot that you never stopped talking to God through the whole thing. Like he was a safe place to like talk to the entire time.
You don't have a choice. I mean, so I would say for me, I had years of tools in a tool belt of disciplines, and I don't know, even worship. And I remember, because it was COVID, like you guys were saying, we weren't meeting in a church for a time, and then we got to go back, but we couldn't go back to the school where we did church. So we met in the evenings in somebody else's church, and I remember worshiping in that season, early cancer, and singing so loud and singing so intentionally, because I was like, there might be days where I can't say these words, where these words are going to be hard, and so I'm singing them today. And it was just like this bound and determined that, like, again, I think it was like, okay, God, I have said these things and believed these things. And so what am I going to do now that this is hard, or this isn't how I would have written this? And so, I mean, you're talking to God because he was already, that's already the relationship I had.
Yeah, he's already your friend, already next to you all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I can't say some of the honest stuff I wanted to say to Scott. Scott didn't need any more of that.
Yeah.
So if I needed to have a bad moment, the Lord was the best place to go for that.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I love that you say worship. Like I read somewhere just recently that it's the most powerful warfare to just worship God, and also it's like when you don't know how to pray, when you don't know what to say, when you just can't find the words, it's like you can just worship. And I'm curious because you said, I didn't know if I'd be able to say those same words, in now your healing journey. How does that look? How does your relationship with God, how has that shifted, changed, grown?
Yeah, I fortunately up to this point haven't had a moment where I wasn't able then to talk to the Lord, or I haven't really, um, I'm not going to say I've never been angry,
Mhm.
but like I haven't stayed there.
Yeah.
I mean, I know there are stages of grief, and I mean, I kind of tried to force myself through denial. I didn't I didn't feel like I could hang out in denial and be an effective parent. And so I remember going to the cemetery and like staring at the little name before they let you put the big name and going, get it in your head, Lauren. This really happened. Like almost
Oh
like forcing
man.
myself because I
Mhm.
just couldn't. I was afraid I was gonna like look for him or see someone that looked like him out, and I'm like, I can't live that way. I have to grab this, and I don't know. A psychiatrist may tell you I'm not that was not healthy. I don't know, but I just knew for me, I had to grab that. I knew that anger wasn't ideal. I had kids that were angry, and angry together was going to be an explosive issue, and so
Mm.
I like I told you, I have had days where I have just said all the hard things like, this is stupid. This is terrible. Like, how could this be the way that the plan? I have gotten low enough ish to believe that it would have been better if it was me.
Mhm.
And so
Mm.
as a parent, that's hard because your kids need their dad.
Yeah.
And so those are times though too when I'm talking to the Lord and I'm like, this is what my kids need, and God has to remind me, I know what your kids need. I'm their dad. I made
Mm.
them. So, you know, that's the stuff that you have to wrestle. Because man, there is a part of you that's like they could have lived without their mom. But there's just times you're like, I don't know how to do this. Um, so those are I just talk to the Lord. You have to. And I still it's been 4+ years, and people think I've moved on, and I don't like those words. That doesn't ever happen. You don't ever actually move on. You move forward and through it. But there are still days where this is just not how it was supposed to be. There's just
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
dissonance in it's just not how, and that's just true of death, right? And
Mhm.
sin. This just wasn't the design. Okay.
I think that it had to have been so heartbreaking to watch your kids walk through that grief because no one ever wants to watch their kids have such a major loss at such a young age.
Well, and it's continual for them.
Yeah.
So that doesn't go away.
Yeah.
You are forever, there's forever a hole. And
Mhm.
so, yes, at 6 and 11 and in college and making decisions about graduating high school and college and who to marry. And that's what was all happening, literally all right when he died is, you've got 6 and you've got deciding if they're going to marry this guy. And I mean, big life
Yeah.
things are happening in that
It's so
span.
polarized or like so different
Mhm.
too.
Oh
Like
yeah,
this and
for
then like
sure.
who to marry.
You get like the entire box of chocolates in
Yes,
this,
yes.
like all the different ages.
All the different types of grief and things. So, I mean, it is harder for me to watch them because it never goes away. You never don't want your dad
Yep.
at
Yeah.
Yeah.
Christmas. You never don't want your dad when you're having a baby, when you're having a baby boy.
Mhm.
So that's what we have been walking so much of these different life-changing things. And yeah, it is heartbreaking to watch them have to process that and some of my kids have had other loss. And so there's a lot of loss, and trying to point them back to, what to stand on is hard. And you can't I mean, most of mine were becoming adults. And so you can't make them grieve or walk it out a certain way. And so in a lot of ways, you are completely out of control.
Mm.
Yeah.
Which cancer did that anyway. Cancer taught me that anyway.
Yeah.
I do not have the control that I thought I had about
Mm.
anything. I mean, there wasn't a stinking thing I could do about it. So I've really learned that there's a whole lot that I don't have control over,
Mm.
but it doesn't make it easy to watch. Relationships change, and the view of how each other is handling things, perspectives change how you see each other, and there's heartbreak in that. So it is just one of those things where you have to step back and trust that God is still in this, and
Yeah.
that he isn't surprised by this, that he knew that March 25th was going to be Scott's last day, and he's not going, "Oh shoot, now what? What do I do now?" That
Mhm.
Yeah.
he has all that in his hands. And so yeah, as far as my kids, that has been the hardest part.
Mm.
Because for me, marriage, a good one, isn't promised. It's a gift.
Mhm.
It's not the gospel. You can live out the gospel well and never get to be loved by a human on this
Mm.
planet. And
Yeah.
still, the gospel is still the
Ooh,
gospel. So
that's a hard truth.
it's a bonus. It is a cherry on the
Mhm.
top. And so for me, that is different than your dad. And
Mhm.
so I know you can also live out the gospel is still the gospel, even if your parents stink or aren't here. But man, it's hard to tell that to your kid. And
Oh, yeah.
so living that out, and
Mhm.
just living out the gospel, forgiveness, apologies, some grace for just not understanding that it is different for me, that I can get married and it actually doesn't have anything to do with grief being over for me.
Right.
That's really hard to understand when you've never been married or your spouse hasn't died. Or so lots of grace needs to be given, lots
Lots
of
of grace.
forgiveness, and not everybody is prepared to do that, but I try really hard to demonstrate that in the ones that are still in my house. It's given me
Yeah.
insane compassion
Mm.
for other people. It
Yeah.
has changed the way I am able to
I bet.
love and give grace.
Mm. That's
Yeah.
good.
It sounds like Scott, right?
Yeah.
Scott lived with so much intention, like even in the conversation I mentioned my husband and I having last night, I was like, gosh, I would hope that if I knew I was dying, that I would do that well.
Yeah.
And hearing how well he did it, it's just astonishing. It really is. And I think when you live in that way, you don't just die, you leave a legacy.
Yeah.
So if you were to say like what you have tried to carry on in him and even your children, like because of the way that he lived and even the way he died, what would you say?
Yeah, it's important to me that they remember and see that he wasn't a business owner. He wasn't, this, successful person that, however he made money, or even the way that he loved me or them, but that they saw the way that he pointed people back to Christ, that
Mhm.
it was ministry for him. If he was on a work site, if he was, like I said, in the hospital, at the doctor, that he was pointing people back to the Lord, that it had bigger picture purpose. And so
Wow.
a lot of times we will serve in a way for his birthday, or I try to point people back to remembering just that bigger things, like that we can love and serve in a bigger way, because that's what he lived that out so well. And so I want people to remember that more than they remember, some of the worldly successes.
Yeah.
And I don't know, in a way it honors his life for us to do that. So almost every year I do something different for his birthday. I've done various things. This year I just asked people to radically serve our food pantry. I heard it was low, and I mean, I had people in other states sending Amazon deliveries to our food pantry, and
Wow.
I had said let's overflow it. And I heard last week that somebody that works in there was like, it's overflowing, we need to reorganize. And so I was like, okay,
You're like,
mission accomplished.
perfect.
But yeah, so I mean, we've done blood drives before,
Mm.
because I saw the impact of that
Yep.
when he was sick. I've done a deck of cards when he would have been 52. I did a deck of cards and brownie mixes and told people to have people over. And because he did a lot of that. And so people sent me pictures of their gatherings where they had brownies and red Solo cups and played games. And some people invited their neighbors and had written a story out about Scott that I had given them. They wanted to talk about him to strangers. And so that's been really fun for me, for people to, I don't know, kind of keep his story alive. He doesn't need to be kept alive. I know he's fine. So that's not what I mean, but just to kind of honor his life in a way, you know? So
It's that legacy piece,
yeah.
to live on like he did.
Yeah.
I keep getting this like image in my head of solid black stone, which like when I think about it to myself, I think of like an onyx stone that has just been like has endured a ton. Like, and the verse that comes to mind is James 1:2-3-4, which is like, consider it pure joy, my brothers, whenever you face trials of many kinds, yada, yada, yada.
Yep.
And so it just, when you speak and when you share and when you talk about this grievous journey that has faith that has carried you through, that's just like this feeling and this heart that comes to my mind. And when you speak of how you're able to have such compassion for others now, I think that is just a beautiful foundation. And I was wondering if you could share with our listeners a little bit more about what you mean by how you have compassion for others and what that looks like after coming out of that.
I wouldn't say that I've been like merciful or compassionate real high anyway. So my personality is pretty direct, and I joke. My brother and I went on a spiritual gifts test. Mercy is like, I hardly register. You know, it's like really low. But we're called to have it. So I'm not trying to say that I'm rude. This has just given me a different look into the way people grieve, the way people hurt. I watched people ahead of me grieve in certain ways, and I remember thinking, I have no judgment. If it was me, I might not be able to get out of bed. And so then when it was me walking it, I'm like, okay, I knew I needed to fight, but I also understood the desire to like wrap up in a blanket and like evaporate. And so it makes me more compassionate, but also helps me pull people a little bit. I have since I in the last little over a year, I've walked 2 of my friends through losing their husbands.
Oh
And
man. Wow.
that is a very much the Lord just like preparing me to be able to do that. But I do it with a different compassion. I know not everybody's me. They're not the same personality as me. But it helps me see things through a different lens. It helps me the relationships with some of my people that I love that I've lost because of this. I don't know, it just gives me great compassion for moms who have hard relationships with their kids or with their family members. I just realize that so many of us are really trying to do the best we can. And I want to be given the benefit of the doubt. Even, I don't know why, but in the last several years, I don't know if it's just insecurity but women have said some really hard things. And that has really made me really careful about how I treat other women. And that when people said, no, I know her, I know Lauren, and that isn't her, that's not her heart. I needed that. I needed those few people that could see that or remember that. And so I do that. I am really, I work really hard to give people the benefit of the doubt and to go, you know what they said hurt or what they did was dumb, but I know them. So I think it's just changed. When I want the benefit of the doubt, I give it. Because I know I needed it or I needed grace. Because even still, everybody's got thoughts about what you should do. Everybody's got an opinion about how you should handle things. And they say that you grieve how you want. Nobody can tell you how to grieve. But then they have opinions about what you do.
While you're
And
grieving.
yeah, no, for sure. And so you hear all kinds of things. And so it has changed the way that I look at
Yeah.
specifically other women.
Mm.
Can you share, and I'm not trying to, call anyone out or throw anyone under the bus here, but just almost to educate listeners, could you share some examples of like unhelpful things to
Yeah.
don't say?
Well, I mean, I just really think if we can just tell people, look, I'm so sorry.
Mhm.
And then just listen. Like, we don't have to have words.
Yeah.
A lot of the best things that people sent us were scripture that were just very specific, spirit-led scripture.
Yeah.
Scott would get text messages that he would hang on to that because they were just spirit-led scripture that we could stand on. Not necessarily their thoughts or opinions or their dialogue about what the scripture said. My best friend sent me songs, I want to say every day for a solid year.
Mm.
So that was good for me. But for the most part, people that can just listen,
Just
there was
be.
yeah. And
It's
it was
really hard.
harder.
It's hard for people to do that.
It
Like,
is.
very hard.
And in that season for us, COVID made things so bizarre that, like, okay, if he was in the hospital, I couldn't leave. I couldn't go on a walk in the parking lot. If I left, I couldn't come back in, and I was the
Oh,
only visitor he
man.
could have the whole day. And so I
crazy.
stood with my back holding open a door so that I could see my friends, so that people could bring us food, so that so many days, so
Jeez.
many memories of passing on the bad news to his parents in that door,
Mm.
to my friends hugging me and crying, standing in that door. I asked one day, can I just go on a walk? Can I just round the parking lot? No. I mean, I could not leave that building. And if I wanted to be with him. And
Mm.
so I think that just no one said anything magical in that door, but
Mhm.
people stood there and hugged me, brought me things. I think I can't really think of too much that people said that was magical.
Yeah. Just
There was one,
presence.
yeah. There was one
Presence.
conversation I had with a friend early on, like July 10th. So the day after we knew it was bad cancer, and I was super uncomfortable. Like, I think I was sick. I was super sad. I was mad. It was a kid's birthday, and I was like, just go inside and buy whatever you want. I was just like so frustrated. And she was like, you know what, Lauren, we're not supposed to like it here. You're massively uncomfortable because sometimes I think the Lord just lets us remember that we're not supposed to like it here. This is not our home. And I have hung
Oof.
on to that for 5 years now,
Mm.
So I just remember things like truth. That's truth.
Yeah.
It's not her opinion. It's not, try this or those things. The try this, he needs pain meds, or he needs this. It felt like pressure. Like, oh
Mm.
gosh, don't tell me what to do right now. I am
Yeah.
trying so hard to
Mhm.
maintain his dignity, listen to his wishes, things like that.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
yeah, people are going to say goofy stuff, and that isn't too upsetting to me because people are trying and they just say goofy
They're
stuff.
trying. Yeah.
So,
I feel like maybe the podcast came before your now
it did.
husband, right?
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
And I'd love to hear what birthed that and if that has been helpful in your healing process, like how that has kind of evolved over time.
Yeah. I'll have to look back at like the dates, but it seems like it was pretty quickly. During cancer and actually during our adoption, I did a lot of writing, when blogs were a thing.
Mm.
And I really like to write. There are times that it's like you just have words that need to come out. And so sometimes it just comes out and sometimes it doesn't. But so I will write, sometimes I'll write and save it and not publish it because I just have words that are like bubbling up. And I went to a mutual friend that I had never met before and was like, hey, I know I sound crazy, but I think that there's people who have things to say that aren't they're not famous, so they're not getting to say them. And so
Mhm.
what are your thoughts? And she was like, sold. She knew about me. Our mutual friend. She's like, you're going to do this and you're going to write a book. And she was like all about it. She was really awesome. She championed that. And so we just started really quick. We met in a different space, like a rentable podcast space. And I just started talking to people and loved it. I mean, I love it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Same
So
girl.
Me
there's
too.
just,
Me
it's
too.
so fun. It's so
So good.
fun to like get into other people's
Yeah.
minds a little bit and their
Yeah.
story.
I've learned that
And
there's just so much you can learn from everybody.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
And learn
We're
about
all-
God.
yeah, and
we're
learn
all
about
really the
God.
same. Yeah. And it
Yes.
challenges us to
Mhm.
look at things differently. And so, I mean, I've had all kinds of different kinds of hurts, different kinds of stories, and continue to just, I mean, honestly, there's a part of you that's like, you don't even have to have anything crazy. Like every person could come sit in this chair
Right.
and
Yeah.
have something to say.
Mhm.
So, yeah, no, it just, I don't know, it kind of happened and it took off and I love doing it. So
How
I've
long have
hit
you been doing it?
I want to say this is like a 3rd season. So is that 3 years? Yeah.
Okay, a season a year. That's
So,
amazing.
yeah. Yeah.
Are there
So
any,
cool.
do you feel like hearing, small and big hurts and stuff that people went through, do you feel like that in a way was healing even for you? Like, because
yeah,
sometimes, when we experience something, we can feel alone, even though like we kind of know
sure.
other people have lost loved ones too. It's like it's harder to know when you're
Sure.
going through it, right?
Yeah, I know I think that I don't know who they is, but like, I think, psychologists or someone says that you're
They.
not supposed to compare pain. And
Mhm.
for
Right.
me though, it is good for me to see. I read a lot of like, oh, what's her name? Now I'm drawing a blank, but like Holocaust kinds of stories.
Like Corrie Ten Boom
Yes, I
and
read
Viktor
a lot of
Frankl.
her when Scott was sick because it was good for me to be like, you know what? While this is hard, I am not having to hide scripture in my bra to be able to read one book of the Bible. I have access and I can live this loud. And I don't know, it was just good for me to see what actual suffering like really looks like outside of America, and in time periods when they were like literally ripping up scripture and passing it around because they could only have a few pages. And I don't know, it just made me take the focus off of myself. And a lot of times it was good for me to go, hey, when I'm sad, I'm going to pray for you. So like while we were walking through our kind of cancer, I'm praying for a woman with breast cancer because when I'm looking at me and wanting to pout, I'm going to pray for you. And I still do that.
That's
When
good.
I want to pout about the way my story looks today, I'm going to pray for you. And it just helps me. I'm not saying my pain isn't valid and that I shouldn't feel
Right.
it. I'm not diminishing that. And I'm not teaching my kids not to feel their pain because somebody else has it harder. I'm not trying to sound cold-blooded, but someone else is always hurting too. And there are hard stories too. And so if I can just go, okay, God, I know you have mine and you're holding me and I'm kept, then I can also go, but I'm not going to stare at me because there's another person made in your image too that is struggling. And so if I can maybe carry that load by walking it out with them or praying
Get your
for
eyes off the
them.
waves, right? And back on
Yeah.
Jesus. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. And it helps me not be self-consumed. It helps me gain perspective and it helps me, like you said, look at him.
Mm-hmm. That's so good, Lauren. Will you tell us about meeting your now husband?
Okay.
Because Brianna and I love stories.
Oh, well, good.
We
No,
love
it's a good one. I mean, my first love story was so good. And so to think that you could deserve to be loved twice is just, you don't deserve that. So he was going to church at where I go to church, but he has a very different story than me. He has a very hard story and he had spent the last 9 years in prison up until he actually got out right before Scott died. And so he started coming to our church and when I wasn't coming, when I was walking out those last weeks. And things were hard. And so he immediately started coming and serving. So he was very involved. He became a Christian many years prior in prison. So he's a podcast that you guys should listen to on Ordinary Grit. It's a really good story.
Ooh, that sounds good.
Ooh,
But
yes.
yeah, he's one of those stories of it didn't take other people, didn't take some big. God showed up alone in a jail cell and told him to read scripture he'd never read before, that for no reason would he have thought these thoughts of to read
Wow.
Genesis 22. Okay. Like what it did for me when we first became friends was it made me believe in miracles again, because I think I had maybe gotten a little cynical that our church was fasting and praying, and people were pleading. There was an older gentleman in our church that passed out on camera because he had been fasting that week for Scott. Like, people were really like all out asking the Lord, and it is not the way he wrote it. And while I still believed he was who he said he was, there was a part of you that's like, yeah, but,
Yeah, but
and so David introduced himself to me like the summer after Scott died, and I kind of was like, hey, nice to meet you, moved on. And then like a year later, he came up to me at a service and just said, after church, and just said, hey, I want to know you. And so how can I know
that's
you?
very direct.
And
I want to know you.
it was very, which you appreciate when you're, later in your life, and you don't want to spend time that's wasteful.
Yeah.
But I'm very like type A. And so I was like, well, this week I'm going to be, and he was like, hey, we have lots of time. And so then he walked away.
No rush.
And it was like, well, I don't know what that means. And so he definitely like wasn't asking me on a date. And he will tell you that at that time, his heart really was just, there's something about her that I just want to know her. And he had prayed for people he could communicate with. Again, he came from a very different background, and the way that he grew in his faith in prison. He grew because of people who come and spend their time there. And so there are great people that invested and spent their time to help those men grab a hold of some things, and basically was discipled there. And so when we first became friends, that's a whole very cool story. We actually
Its own
just
podcast.
ran into it is. Oh, it is.
Yeah.
Wow.
We just ran into one of the ladies that used to come into the county jail, and we were at Walmart, and he's like, I really think that's her. And I'm like, well, this is your moment. Like, we're going to leave. And if that,
this is
and it was, she was one of the old ladies that, older ladies that came into the county jail. And I'm not even sure she remembered him because she spoke to so many men. But for her to see a guy, one who got out, okay, because
in Walmart.
he did some things that could have made him be there forever. And for him to be out, and for him to actually be walking it out with the Lord, with one woman, to be married to one woman and living this way. And like, it was so good for her to see that.
Praise
So
God.
anyway, his story is just so different, that we were friends very slow, because I'm like, surely you believe things or do things that I'm not going to like. And so I just like drilled him with questions. Like, I was constantly waiting for him to mess up. Like, what's your view on pornography? What's your view on this? What's your view on, and because I just was waiting for him to say something that made me go, yeah, no, I have no desire to keep
You're
having
like,
this
there it was,
conversation.
red flag. Goodbye.
Right. And not that his past isn't a flag of some kind, and I'm not an idiot,
True.
but over time you watch a person be who they say they are consistently.
Right.
So it was kind of one of those things where, I don't know, he was probably in it before I was. Not probably, he was. He knew what he wanted really quickly, and I didn't. And because I didn't need it. Not that he needed it either. He is a strong guy. He would be just fine without me. I just mean, I was probably a little hardened. I was a little bit rough, and my edges were rough. And I've always been direct, but I was just like ready to run, ready to, like I said, he messes up, he says something dumb, and I don't want to be friends. And it took me a long time to be able to go, no, I know that what I want, even though it has consequence. Because there are people around me who are not a fan of this being part of my story. And so that was the hardest part of being all in. And so it took me a long time to be all in, especially as adults. As adults, you don't typically need to date for, 2 years, but you
Yeah. 'Cause
typically know before that. I mean, we dated probably about that long. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you said you guys now are celebrating 6 months. So
Ish. Yeah.
it's
We got
also
married in
funny.
January. So maybe it's 8 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
Another thing my husband and I will joke about, about if anything happened, right? I'm like, who in the world would I
Yeah.
even date, right? It's like, hello, this
Yeah.
is who I am. Also, I have 4 kids, right? And so I know not all your kids live at home now, but that's still your responsibility, still your life.
Oh, yeah.
Even
No.
those who are married and all that, like that's still your time, your energy, whatever. So to be like, hello, and also 8 children,
Yeah.
just by the way.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No,
So
it's real
even more
attractive.
amazing.
Who doesn't want that? The widow who was married to this like larger than
Amazing
life guy
man.
that everybody yeah. These literal and figurative big shoes to fill. And yeah, 8 kids. And and she's not like quiet and passive. And so, yeah, it's like, who doesn't want to sign up for that? But, and I wasn't looking for it. I was not going to go out and look for it. But he was my friend when those hard things were being said about me, when it felt like nobody knew me, when my integrity was questioned, or when he was my friend when I felt really alone. And I look back at that. I was just thanking him the other day. I literally just sent a text after I was listening to, I don't know, it was probably like a podcast about these older people that were trying to figure out dating. And I just texted him and I was like, hey, thanks for being so clear. Like,
Yeah.
I knew what he wanted. I knew he was not messing around. And so even though it took me a minute, I knew what he wanted. He was not teasing me. And I'm super grateful for that. That I needed his friendship at the beginning. And that was just God's provision, more than I could have realized. I didn't know that I needed that. So
Yeah, that's
no, it's
so
good.
good. Man, I wish we could just keep talking because I kind of feel bad that we didn't even get to tell the story of the adoption, everything. Our
It's
youngest is
okay.
adopted, so it's extra special to my heart too. So maybe you'll just have to come back and share that
Okay.
story and
Yeah,
more.
it's a
But
good one too.
before we let you go, just want to give an opportunity, like if there's just anything, you could take this however you want it. So either it's something we just haven't got to that's still burning on your heart, or just maybe in this season of your life, is there anything in particular like God's really been speaking to you?
Oh, no, I would just say that we're kind of full circle back to the beginning of that. While scripture says that faith without works is dead, and that there is a compelling to do things because of what God has done for me, I would just remind people that it really isn't about anything that we do that makes him
Mm,
love us,
mm,
and that we are called to just know him and
yeah.
walk with him. And so if we're in Christ, that's it. It's that simple. And that's where the freedom, I think, comes in. And as a result, we do. But the doing doesn't make him love me more. And
Mm.
so that's what I would say.
That's good. Oh, I appreciate that so much. Well, Lauren, thank you again for just being here. Also, just being vulnerable, sharing just all these parts of the story. And yeah, I mean, we prayed even before we started recording that the right people will hear this. And whether that means that you've walked through something similar and you have something to glean, or it could just help you in general if you know somebody walking through something like this.
Right.
So, yeah, just thank you again for everything you shared. And to our listeners, thanks for joining us, and join us again next week for another inspiring story. Thanks for listening in today, and we hope that you enjoyed today's episode.
Just remember, your story matters, and God is using it to create echoes way beyond what you can see.
If this episode encouraged you, please share it with a friend, subscribe, and leave us a review. We'd love to hear from you.
Until next time, keep trusting God, leaning into His purpose, and allow your life to echo His love.